everybody, and welcome. Today, we are going to be talking about ethics in photo manipulation. Again, ethics are the morals and principles that govern a person's behavior while participating in a certain activity. So, in this case, it would be photo manipulation. The essential question are, what are the creative and ethical aspects of digital photo manipulation? Now, our two big key terms here are going to be photo manipulation and photo retouching, and you'll find that there are a big difference between the two. So some questions to keep in mind during this whole presentation are, where do we draw the line between creativity and deception? How do the purpose and context of photo editing affect how we feel about it? And also, what role does the internet play in allowing us to share, inspire, and critique images that have been edited? So if we look at these two images here, we see that they are quite fantastic, right? We have this giant rock sort of hovering from the sky. The sky looks like water, as if it's sort of like falling through the sky and then coming down to earth. It's sort of a wonderful, creative image. Same thing with the image on the right. We have this house that's been photo manipulated into this tree. So when we think about sort of photo manipulation, right? Photo manipulation is taking an image and altering it and manipulating it to be something totally different. So we have a couple different images that we are bringing together to then turn into one image. Now, this isn't trying to convince anybody that this is real, even though it might look real. It's art, right? So when we think about sort of creativity in art, we think about how photo manipulation can really be a creative art form. However, if we were to try and convince that these images were real, that's when it becomes deceptive. Same thing with this awesome image. We have this cabin being like photoshopped into the side of this tree. Again, it kind of looks real. It's pretty fantastic. And it seems believable the way that it's been altered and photoshopped. But again, we're not trying to say that this is a real photograph. It's a really fun, creative way to think about the way that we bring the domestic and the home into nature and wildlife, and sort of how these sort of unique places can come together as one. Same thing with this image here. We have a boat that's hovering in the water. It also looks like it could be maybe a shadow. So when we think about kind of the difference between photo manipulation and photo retouching, we think really about sort of at what point does it become unbelievable? And at what point do I feel like I'm being deceived? Now, photo retouch or photo manipulation, what's the difference? So photo retouch is changing the image to remove or repair damaged or unwanted blemishes or objects. So if we look at this top image here, we have this really old photo of this person on the left, and you see that there's some scratches and it's in this black and white sepia tone. And then on the right, it's been colorized, those scratches have been removed, and it just kind of brings that old photo back to life. Now, photo manipulation is to change the photo with the intent of altering its message or meaning. So if we look at this fish image at the bottom, we have this giant fish in this tiny lake. And then on top of the fish's back, we have an island with a house, and it looks like a shed. So when we think about photo manipulation, we are altering its message or its meaning, and we're making it either way more fantastical, or we're completely changing the meaning or the tone of the message itself. Now, the image of the fish, no one's saying that this is a real image or a real place, but it's fun to think about as an art or as an artistic practice. Now, I want you to spend a minute and think, is this photo manipulation or alteration? Now, some of the earliest photo manipulations meant people actually had to move items around to create different photographic compositions. This Matthew Brady Civil War photograph was created supposedly by moving a dead body into the sniper's nest for the photo. And yeah, you heard that right. That is gross. Now, when we think about photo manipulation, it's really altering the image to give an audience member a certain view. So this is sort of like old school fake news, right? When we think about what war looked like. Now, in the Civil War, that was the first war that photography was around for. So when we think about the impact, knowing that a lot of the images from that time and from that war have all been faked and manipulated, it really changes the way that we understand how those wars were fought, as well as sort of how these people might have passed. Same thing when we think about presidential candidates, taking Abraham Lincoln's body and putting a different president's head on it, right, becomes a different problem as well. So when we think about sort of the history of presidential fake news, right, and changing and swaying public opinion, if you want to have a much more regal, respected portrait, might as well just use an old one and stick your face on top of it. Now, back in the day, there was a thing called spirit photography, which was where you could hire somebody to take old photos of past loved ones and put them all into one image with you. So, in this case, we have a passed away mother that's been added into this photo as well. Now, some of these were intentional, and families just wanted a portrait of everyone all together. However, sometimes you would have these photographers that would try and scam and sell these to people, trying to tell people these are real photographs of spirits. Now, here today, gone tomorrow. So here's an example of a photo manipulation from Soviet Russia. So a human being is entirely erased from history, or attempted to erase the person by removing him from all official photos and news. So if we look on the left here, we see this person here has been totally photo manipulated out. Now, they didn't have Photoshop back in the day, so this was all done by hand, by cutting multiple images out and gluing them together and using some other techniques. But think about what the implications or the ramifications are of totally altering someone's existence out of a photo. So this could be some type of negative association with someone from a different country that you're trying to sway public opinion for. So when we think about sort of photo manipulation as a way to present fake information to a public, that's where we start running into some serious problems. If we look at this image here, the photographer manipulated the photo to make a better composition. So if we look up here, we'll see we have all of these people in this photograph. But if you look down here, you can see we are creating emphasis by removing these people here on his right side just to make him stand out more. So if you notice, this is much darker over here. It's dark here. He's in the center, so he is being emphasized in the photo. So even if we are just trying to make a photo better by removing people, still altering sort of that context in the way that we perceive the image can have negative effects on a viewer. Same thing if we look at this image here of this general, we notice that when we're trying to have a really regal portrait, we don't want it to look like somebody is holding the horse for us. It makes us feel incompetent, which is why if you don't know how to ride a horse, but you want to pretend that you do, you would Photoshop the person that's holding the horse out of it. So if you notice, this is the portrait that the public saw. However, if we look on the image on the right, this is the image that was actually taken. So when we think about the real image that was edited and published, we always want to be thoughtful of kind of what that context could be. This would be like if you saw Mr. Malloy doing sort of a dunk right at, maybe an assembly, but everyone's like, oh, I didn't see that. But really, it was just Photoshopped of me jumping up there, slamming that dunk. So thinking about kind of how do we change public opinion by the images that we use and change and alter to do so. Now, even the most credible media sources, including the National Geographic, have been guilty of manipulating an image to a degree that the subject has been significantly altered. So by adjusting the position of the pyramids to better fit the vertical format of the magazine cover, National Geographic spurred one of the greatest debates about the issue of digital manipulation. Now, National Geographic is known for having some of the most high quality, realistic images of the world. But what happens to the credibility of a source when you are changing the landscape or changing an image just so it looks better in your magazine is where people start to have some serious issues. Now, something to think about this too is what happens when people start taking fake pictures of places that don't actually exist and trying to tell people that they do. That's when we start running into some serious ethical concerns. Same thing when we look at the O.J. Simpson trial. Time magazine was guilty of making O.J. Simpson's skin darker and putting this dark vignette around him to make him look more villainous. And if we look at the image on the right, notice how it just looks like a normal picture of O.J. So when we think about how we are manipulating photo images, whether he was guilty or not, the way that we use and alter images really affects the perception of a person. Also, if we look at the type that they put on top, things like this, it really becomes questionable. Now, if we look at Wisconsin here, what they did for their 2001-2002 undergraduate application, this is what they sent out to homes and schools, and this is what they sent, or what the actual image looked like. Can you find the difference? You guessed it, they added this black guy over here. Now, the reason why they are adding people of color into their school is because Wisconsin's school is a majority white. And so, in order to get more people of color to their school by photoshopping a black person into their application, then it makes it look like a much more diverse place for maybe people of color to want to go to that school in order to then sell to that demographic of people. So when we think about sort of how we are using Photoshop and photo manipulation to completely change sort of the perception of a school, for example, we have some serious issues happening, right? Because what happens if you see people that look like you in the ads, and then you go there and you realize that you are the only person that looks like you, and you might wish that you went to a different school or regret your decision altogether. So hopefully you have a better understanding now of photo ethics and manipulation. Thinking about the difference between photo alterations and photo manipulation.